11 days to Christmas. If you're a government minister and you're hoping for something nice from Santa, it's not looking good. Nobody's getting a partridge in a pear tree this year. The last thing the Home Secretary wanted to see were 3 ships sailing. Yesterday, the wind dropped, and so did more than 500 illegal migrants. Shabana Mahmood's getting tough on immigration. The public might like it, but critics in her own party aren't carolling joy to the world. And over in the health department, flus are coming in, and the doctors are walking out. Happy Christmas, Wes. We'll speak to the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, and her opposite number in the Conservatives, Trevor Phillips. And we'll get some immediate reaction to what the Home Secretary says about the grooming gang's inquiry with survivor Fiona Goddard. Also, with growing concern over a flu crisis, just as resident doctors threaten to strike again, I'll be joined by British Medical Association Chair Dr. Tom Dolphin. Plus, with us throughout the show, broadcaster, columnist and former Labour advisor Sonia Soda, author and broadcaster Ian Dale, and co-founder of the Centre for Social Justice and Reform activist Tim Montgomery. Welcome to Sunday Morning with Trevor Phillips. President Lyndon Baines Johnson said that the first rule of politics is learn how to count. If you are the Labour or Conservative leader, your sinking poll numbers make counting that much simpler than a year ago. You could just use your fingers and toes. After all, neither party is breaking 20% support amongst the voting public. Nigel Farage's Reform, on the other hand, has consistently been racking up around 30% for months. Of course, it's probably years until the next election. A lot could change. But what is important about populists, particularly those on the right, is the pressure they're already exerting on the traditional parties. Internationally, the old guard is buckling. Centre-left leaders in France, Germany, Sweden, Holland and Denmark are adopting the sort of immigration policies they used to decry as racist. Here, Keir Starmer's negotiating deals with other countries that look suspiciously like the Rwanda scheme. Mrs. Badenoch now says she'll leave the European Convention on Human Rights and looks set to lift the hearts of petrol heads everywhere by pushing back electric vehicle mandates by years. I think the populists have added a whole new dimension to that LBJ maxim. In a volatile democracy with 5, possibly 6 parties jostling for votes and a few percentage points the difference between a hung parliament and a landslide, a party really doesn't have to be in office to be in power. Let's start this morning with the government. A few moments ago, I spoke to Shabana Mahmood. Home Secretary, how serious is the flu outbreak we're facing?
Well, it is very serious. We're already seeing the impact it's having on hospitals across the country. We always plan every single year for a flu outbreak, and that's what's happened this year. But of course, I think the numbers are a bit more serious this year, and that's why the Health Secretary, the Prime Minister and everyone across government wants to make sure that the planned strikes by resident doctors do not go ahead. The NHS is under huge strain at the moment, and the last thing anybody needs to see are strikes in the NHS.
Is that your message to the BMA chair? Because I'll be talking to him later.
Yes, very much so. I think that the government has made a fresh offer. There's a new deal on the table. It deals with some of the issues relating to resident doctors' conditions that they've been worried about, particularly on training places. The Health Secretary has said we'll make more of those available. He's willing to pass emergency legislation to make that a reality. I think it's a good deal. And I really would say to all resident doctors watching today, it's a good deal. They should take it.
What's your reaction to the way that the doctors have dealt with this? There are people who think that they are now putting lives at risk.
Well, I think it's undoubtedly the case that any strikes in the NHS do put lives at risk. We want to make sure that the NHS is supported through a difficult winter and through this particular flu outbreak that we're seeing at the moment. And I just think it's really important that everybody realises what's at stake here. I do think there's a bit of a difference between the stance that the leadership of the resident doctors has taken and individual views of those doctors themselves. And I would just say to everybody, wherever they sit within the resident doctors sort of community, there's a good offer on the table. There's been a 30% increase in the pay of resident doctors. It's well deserved. These are very hardworking public servants, but they have seen the best pay deal of anyone in the public sector. I think the government has shown its bona fides here in supporting resident doctors, and I really do wish that they would take that deal on the table.
Today, you are calling violence against women and girls in this country a national emergency. You're planning to introduce specialist police squads. Now, the Institute for Government says that 50% of the police officers currently on sexual violence and rape squads are trainees. I mean, how are you going to get these squads to work? Is it your intention to move experienced officers from other duties into this area?
Well, look, firstly, it is a national emergency, and what we will be publishing next week is a strategy across the whole of government, a real change in the way that we look at the whole issue of violence against women and girls. We're not willing to treat this as a fact of life, and we want to go further on dealing with perpetrators and make sure that the whole system is geared up in a way that it can actually deliver justice for victims of these terrible crimes. And that's why the rape and sexual offence units in every police force by the end of this Parliament is a really crucial part of what we're saying we're going to do. It isn't just about trainees. What I want to see the step change here is this is seen as business as usual for the police. It's so pervasive, these crimes, violence against women and girls, that it's really important that all police forces are capable of dealing appropriately, sensitively, context-driven, focus on the suspects when women come to them with an allegation of rape or other sexual offences.
But if they're going to deal with these crimes, they're as serious as you say, they've got to have both the capability and the resource. The point about the current squads, and then they're not going to be as big as the ones that you want to set in place. They don't actually have the senior people. They don't have the people with experience in them right now, and you want to make them even more significant. Where are you going to get the people to staff them?
It's a postcode lottery at the moment. If you're a victim, in terms of the standard of service you're going to get when your allegation is being investigated by the police and whether that is going to lead to charges ultimately and hopefully a successful prosecution. We want to turn that around. That's why we do think it has to be a national programme of making sure that these teams are rolled out across the country. And what I would say to you is at the moment, the police are working to up their game on how they respond to rape and sexual offence cases. And what we're saying is that we want to build on that, but make sure that there is a specialist team in every force. So I don't think that what we're saying here is that there's nothing good happening at the moment. We want to build on what's happening at the moment. We have a national centre for violence against women and girls and public protection. But they will work with police forces to make this real and make it effective.
The reason I'm really asking about this is we can see what the promise is. But are the resources there? Let's take another one of the proposals you're making, especially a team of, let's call them techies, to do covert investigation into online crime, a kind of geek squad, I guess. But you're investing just £2 million. That's barely enough to fund a couple of dozen experienced cyber hackers with their laptops. I mean, that doesn't get anywhere near the scale of the problem.
Well, just firstly, on resources for the specialist teams, the resources are there. This is a question of making sure every force ensures that they have the capability to deal with these sorts of cases in an appropriate way, learning all of the lessons that we've seen.
The £2 million is not much,
On the undercover operatives, that's going to be a pilot scheme, £2 million for 18 months, because we've never gone into the online space looking at violence against women and girls specifically. We have a good track record on child sexual abuse and using undercover operatives to tackle that. We've already safeguarded, thousands of children on that, using that scheme, and we brought over 1,000 charges as well for people committing child sexual abuse offences. So we want to take the learning from that and apply it to violence against women and girls. The offences and how they present themselves online are different. So this is a first attempt to try and learn some lessons, see the sort of intel that we can pick up, share it with Ofcom so they can take measures against some of those platforms. So it is a good start, I think, going into a new area, because we know the online space is also dangerous for women and girls.
Well, exactly. Can I ask you a broader question about the online space, as you put it? You want to change the attitude of young boys and young men who they follow people like Andrew Tate. Is it really the state's business to be looking over the shoulders of teenagers?
Well, I think that when you know that 1 in 8 women in this country in the last year were victims of domestic abuse, sexual assault and other violence against women and girls offences, that is a huge number. This is a massive problem for our society, and we know that we have to get upstream of many of these problems and prevent these offences from taking place in the first place. Attitudes towards women, attitudes towards what is acceptable in relationships, I think that is the right place for us to think about how we
into invasion of privacy and suppression of freedom of expression?
Well, look, there's always going to be a line, but I think that we are very far the other side of what is acceptable of that line at the moment. I think it is right that we think about how we give schools and parents the tools they need to make sure that they are raising boys who will grow to be healthy young men in their own right, but also with a good understanding of what healthy relationships look like. We'll be setting out more of our proposals on those specifics later in the coming week. But I think it is important that the state takes some action, because we're not willing to sit back and just accept that violence against women and girls is a fact of life. And I think for too long, across society, it's just something that we expect. It's just something that's normal, and we're calling time on that.
Let me ask you about the appointment of the former Children's Commissioner, Anne Longfield, to fulfil the recommendation of Baroness Katie's report on grooming gangs. It's police's job to find perpetrators, CPS's job to prosecute them. Now, the underlying scandal here, I think, seems to be that most forms of child abuse are secret, but this was widely known about in neighbourhoods and where they took place. And the real job, surely, is to hunt down the people who turned a blind eye, people who covered things up, to discover how communities closed ranks. I mean, isn't this really a job for a forensic investigator rather than a child policy expert?
Well, I think it's a job for somebody who's got a track record of holding public authorities to account, because you're absolutely right. We've got the issue in relation to the perpetrators themselves and then being brought to justice. And you'll know that we have started Operation Beacon Port, which is a National Crime Agency programme looking at closed cases, and they're already opening up fresh investigations. So those men that maybe thought they got away with it, I think that they'll soon feel the full force of the law. So that is a national reopening of old cases to double-check and make sure we can go after those
How many
perpetrators
cases do you think that's going to involve?
Well, they're already looking at 200 cases of rape, for example, that they're revisiting and looking at once again to see if further charges can be brought. So closed cases are being reopened, and I think that that's a really important thing. The inquiry itself, the way it will be set up, any evidence that they uncover of criminality, either of perpetrators or of people who look the other way and who might have crossed criminal thresholds, they will be able to share that immediately with the police. I think what we have in Anne Longfield and with Zoe Billingham and Eleanor Kelly are 3 women who have a very strong track record of holding different types of public authorities to account, children's services, local authorities and police forces as well. And I think that's a really critical skill that the panel and the chair needed to have, and these 3 women absolutely have that.
Some of the survivors have complained that the dissolution of the advisory group is, in a sense, a lack of seriousness in your attitude towards them.
Well, look, we've obviously had a difficult period of managing the different views in the particular panel of victims and survivors that were informing the creation of the inquiry itself. It was always meant to be a time-limited panel because it was there to help us work out how to get the inquiry up and running and to get it off the ground. That's now in train.
But they say you're dissolving because you just don't like some of their views.
Not at all, and they will all have an opportunity to feed into the inquiry. So one of the things that the inquiry is going to do is create its own charter for how they are going to engage with victims and survivors. And what I would say to all victims and survivors is it's really difficult, obviously, for you, and we wouldn't expect everyone to agree. There will always be disagreements and a difference of emphasis between people on what they want to see. But the inquiry is up and running. There are draft terms of reference they will be consulted on. From March next year, it will get fully underway. What I would say is engage with the process. It's for us to show you that you can trust this process, but we are all absolutely committed to getting the answers that we as a whole country need, not least the victims and survivors.
May I just ask you one last question on this, which I think probably you are better equipped to answer than most government ministers. There's been a lot of focus on the ethnicity of the perpetrators, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Afghan, Muslim men. Less on the victims, pretty much all young, white women. Are we in danger of missing a point here, that in the communities these men came from, there's a kind of contempt on the part of those communities towards these girls? And by the way, that's shared by some of the authorities, that actually it's as much the attitude towards the nature of the survivors and marked by their race as it is to do with the ethnicity of the perpetrators?
Well, these will all be matters that the inquiry will look at. What I would say is my own perspective on this has always been that this group of girls, and they were all children when they were raped and abused, were seen by large parts of society, including the authorities that were there to protect them and that should have protected them and kept them safe, as white trash. Because they were from poorer backgrounds, they were vulnerable, they needed people to stand by them and help them. And it was easy to look the other way because they were almost dehumanised to the point where they weren't really seen as little girls at all. And look, Anne Longfield and the panel will make their own findings and recommendations. But I do think that what this scandal has exposed is a societal attitude of dismissal and dehumanisation of a particular class of young white girls. And it is an absolute scandal and it must never happen again.
All right, the other big thing that's on your plate, we've given the French £500 million to stop the small boats coming across the channel. You've come up with this one in, one out policy, I should say. The only thing that seems to stop the crossings is bad weather. And when the weather got a bit better yesterday, we had more than 500 coming across. To take a horrible metaphor, you haven't turned the tide on this, haven't you?
Not yet. Look, we are working very closely with our partners in France, particularly in the north of France, but actually further upstream.
Do you think we should have our money back?
Partners in Europe as well. Look, the work that we're doing with law enforcement in France has already stopped 20,000 crossings. In fact, even yesterday when we saw the change in weather, as you rightly point out, led to people successfully making a crossing again. There were disruptive methods, and they did stop some of those boats.
£500 million is a lot of money to spend on just keeping it at the current level.
No, it is. Look, it's a lot of money, and we have learnt a lot since we've been in government about which are the interventions that really work, and those are the interventions that we want to focus our efforts on with our partners in France. But this is a difficult challenge. I was on your show just a few weeks ago talking about some of the other changes I want to make to change the calculus of those that are looking to get on the boats in the first place, and then also to remove more people who arrive here illegally as well. So there is no one silver bullet here. I think I've acknowledged that before, and I acknowledge it again. We have to come up with a range of proposals at every level in order to try and bear down on this.
The proposals you've come up with, your party doesn't fancy them very much. You had a demonstration in your own constituency yesterday. Your backbenchers mutter about the language and they talk about you being reform light. Mr Farage is publishing pictures of you, in reform colours because he says you're really one of them.
Well, I mean, that's mischief making, and I think I've challenged that pretty robustly myself. There's, I've been very clear about the Labour values that I have brought to the policy decisions that I am making, that I'm making for a Labour government. All of our reforms are underpinned by the principles of fairness and of contribution. I think those are absolutely critical, and that is what is needed to build a system that the public can have confidence in.
Prime Minister doesn't seem to be able to make up his mind whether Mr Farage is a racist or not. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think it's for Nigel Farage. I've said this before. It's for him to answer for his own conduct. I'm not here to, make investigations.
Why can't you guys just say what you think?
In the past. Well, I am saying what I think, which is it's for him to answer questions about his own conduct. Allegations have been made. He has to deal with it. What I've actually said is I think he does something, in my view, almost worse, which is he's very careful about leaning in with plausible deniability, but giving a dog whistle to every racist in the land about what he might really mean. And I think that's actually really irresponsible, and I've always called him out on that.
All right, this a story which you'll understand why I'm asking you this. News story about Andy Burnham's leadership ambitions this morning. Doesn't deny it. Does it annoy you that you're busting a gut to deal with immigration and crime and this and that and the other, yet others in your party seem focused on fuelling speculation about the leadership?
Well, I think that, and again, I was on your show just saying this a few weeks ago.
Labour government,
I know. Labour governments don't come along very often, and every minute that we have in government is precious. It's a privilege to be in government. I'm focused on the big job that I have as Home Secretary, and my advice to all colleagues everywhere would be that it's a precious privilege, and we mustn't waste a single minute of it. We have a big agenda. We have to crack on with delivering for the
including if you're running a big city.
Wherever you sit in the Labour family, we all have a role to play in supporting the Labour government deliver for the people of this country.
All right, this is a very last point, really. President Trump's national security strategy says that Europe faces civilizational erasure, it's called. It's called by migration policies that are transforming the continent and loss of national identities. I think he's pointing the finger at people like you. I think he's talking about Muslims. What's your response?
Well, I think that I'm very proud to be a citizen of a country that is as diverse as we are. We are a multi-faith, multi-ethnic country. I think that we have managed the challenges very well compared to other countries. That's not to say that we don't have work to do on integration, on the pace of change in our communities. It's why I'm looking very closely at not just illegal migrants into our country, but legal migration as well, to make sure it's done in a way that retains public confidence. It means that we can deal with the pace of change. Others will want to make political points about, whether there's too many Muslims in Europe or not. What I would say is we're the sort of country that allows people to have the calling of their...
It's Donald Trump.
Well, this is a country that allows people to have the calling of their own conscience, to live their own life free, but also has common rules that we all live by so that we live in peace together. And we have, generally speaking, done that quite well in this country compared to others. And that is a precious thing that I would never want to lose.
There's a serious point underlying this, which is somebody in your party once said, we don't do God. I think you take a different view, don't you? And what Donald Trump is saying is that there are people who, for example, like yourself, who come to politics with a particular point of view informed by your faith background, and that is a threat to Europe.
Well, obviously, I reject that. I can't speak for other countries in Europe, but what I can say here is I think if you look at people in public life, and I say this about people in other political parties as well as my own, generally speaking, people are motivated by serving the communities that they come from and doing their best for the country. And even when we disagree as vociferously as we do on matters of party politics, we're all here to serve our country. And what I would say for myself is my faith is the reason I'm in public service. It's the reason why I want to serve my country and do my best to make our country a better place for millions of people. I think that is a positive thing. And I think that this country has done both race relations and also relations between different religious communities reasonably well. There's always more work to do.
Do you think our country's ever going to be ready to give me a Muslim Prime Minister to interview?
Well, that's not a thing I can predict for the future. But what I can tell you is you have a Muslim Home Secretary in front of you that you've just been interviewing, and I think that shows the art of the possible in this country. Home Secretary, thank you for your time this morning. Thank you.
Well, that was Home Secretary. We need to pause for a moment to bring you some breaking news. There are reports now of a shooting on Bondi Beach in Sydney in Australia. Police say they're responding to a situation there and they have 2 people in custody. Local media is saying that several people have been injured, and video shared on social media shows 2 men dressed in black shooting near the beach's car park. Now, our correspondent Oliver Whitfield-Murchich is in the newsroom. Oliver, what do we know?
So we know that there's been these reports of gunshots that have been fired very close to the beachfront on Bondi Beach in Sydney, a hugely popular area with tourists, with locals and with expats alike. There's a very big expat community all around Bondi Beach. It's just coming up to 8 o'clock at night in Sydney, and even at that time of the evening, with the weather being as warm as what it is, with it being the summer currently in the southern hemisphere, Bondi Beach is often rammed. The area has got a lot of restaurants along that beach. There are some beachside restaurants on the streets right nearby. There are pubs that are often popular on a Sunday evening. Now, what we know is that the police say there are 2 people who are currently in police custody, but they say that their police operation is still ongoing. There had been a stay-in-place, a shelter warning issued by New South Wales Police. There's been reports of these multiple gunshots that have been fired and fears that there could be some injuries. But so far, that is all the information that we have got to go on, that this gunshots have been fired right next to Bondi Beach, a hugely popular location in Sydney, especially on these summer evenings when people would have been out. It's not just popular with people who go surfing on Bondi Beach, although that's its main claim to fame. This is an area where people will come to just to sit on the beach, gather, be with friends, especially on a Sunday, 11 days before Christmas. This will have been an area that would have been packed, even at this late time of evening. As I say, 8 o'clock in the evening it's coming up to in Sydney. And so the authorities in Sydney will be on high alert. Their police investigation ongoing, even though these 2 people are in custody. The police saying that their operation is ongoing, and they've urged people to stay away from the area while they try to ensure that everybody is safe.
Oliver, thank you so much. Keep us posted. We have our panel, Sonia Soda, Ian Dale, Tim Montgomery. Sonia, first reactions?
I mean, it's just terrible news, isn't it? I really feel for everybody who's affected, everyone who's in the area. People have had that warning from police to sort of stay away. I'm sure it's very frightening if you live there. But obviously it's too early to know anything about, exactly who's perpetrated this, what their motivations are, etc. So it's just one of those news stories that you hear about and you just think, gosh, totally awful.
Ian, we will probably be able to speak to our correspondent in Sydney in a moment, but Ian, these things, not only do they seem to be more frequent, but they have an impact on us in thousands of miles away.
Well, they do, and I think anyone that's ever been to Bondi Beach, I've been there, I mean, it's one of those iconic places. If you want to create an impact in Australia, that's probably the place that you would choose to do something like this. As your correspondent said, there would have been thousands and thousands of people there. I mean, it's the kind of place you can sort of compare it to a Spanish beach, sort of that we're used to. Sort of people really rammed in. So I suspect it wouldn't take a lot for them to have created a lot of injuries.
I suppose, particularly combined with what we've seen from the United States last night, Tim. There's a sort of sense of vulnerability in the modern world.
There's huge vulnerability, but I always remember probably the greatest terrorist attack of our era was, of course, 9/11. And Rudy Giuliani's advice was tough, but it was what we all must try and do, was go out there, do shopping, do the things that you would normally do again. That's the only way that we ultimately beat terror. It's not easy in the immediate aftermath of something that's potentially as horrific as this. We don't obviously know the full scale of it yet. But leading our normal lives, resuming the normal activities of visiting friends, doing the things that we do normally, that's the way we beat these threats, because it is terrible, and goodness knows what loss of life potentially there is at the moment. But actually, although there's vulnerability, these events are relatively rare.
Well, we can go to our correspondent, Nicole Johnston in Sydney. Nicole, what more can you tell us?
Well, look, this story has only broken in the last 30 minutes, and initially it came out with reports of an active shooter at Bondi Beach. In the last 15 minutes or so, I've received some of the graphic video that is now circulating on social media. A lot of young teenagers are passing it around. The Australian Jewish Association has also posted the same video, and it is graphic and it is shocking. You can see two men, active shooters, firing from a pedestrian bridge right at Bondi Beach with a car park beneath it, one of the sort of most central parts of that sort of vast strip of beach that people use to get onto the beach. There's also video of injured people on the ground. They're receiving medical treatment. There is blood on the ground. So clearly there have been sort of at least a number of injured people there. We don't know how many at this stage. The Prime Minister has confirmed that there has been an active shooter. Now the reports are that 2 people have been taken into custody about that. I was about 10 minutes away from Bondi Beach and just quickly headed back to my home, and there were, a lot of ambulance on the street and police. So things are clearly ramping up. People have been told to keep away from the area. Friends who have children and teenagers sort of enjoying the late afternoon, evening down at Bondi, they've all been told to sort of stay indoors, to go to ground. So a really shocking development in Sydney at Bondi Beach this afternoon, and we're still trying to find out what's behind it. But from the video that's come out, it looks very clear. 2 men dressed in black firing towards people at Bondi Beach. Now, the one other thing that was happening in the area at the time, and we don't know at this stage whether there is any relation to this at all, there was a Jewish Hanukkah event happening in the area, but at this stage we don't know whether or not that is linked.
Nicole, I think we can see some of what took place. Let's play that video. Okay, we've just heard some of the audio of what took place, Nicole. You just said that you thought, or it is being reported, that there was a Hanukkah event taking place. That, of course, puts a completely different complexion on this event.
Well, it could do. We don't know at this stage, so we can't draw conclusions or automatically assume that there is a link to that. The Australian Jewish Association may be concerned that there is, of course. They have posted this video that is now doing the rounds here in Australia. It doesn't surprise me that you may only be listening to the audio and not seeing the video, because I have seen it and it is incredibly graphic to see. And just to report what I saw on the video, 2 men in black over a pedestrian bridge firing at Bondi Beach. So look, it's still very early days. As I said, a lot of ambulance were on the street, police rushing to the area. I live close to one of the major hospitals here in central Sydney, so apparently they're headed towards, some of those injured are headed towards St Vincent Hospital. But also reports coming out that there were dozens of shots fired. So if that is the case, I think we could expect to hear about multiple injuries. But it's still very early days. The area has been locked down, closed off. This has really only taken place in the last half an hour or so. People are being told to stay indoors. But the reports that we're getting is that the 2 active shooters, or at least 2 of them, have been held. There are, of course, concerns that there could be more than that, which is why people in that area are being told to stay indoors.
Okay, Nicole, first of all, keep yourself safe. We will no doubt be coming back to you shortly. It is, as Nicole said, early days, and in these situations, it's wise not to speculate. However, if the connections that are being made are
well, that is
brought
what
out,
is being speculated heavily on social media, that
Yeah.
it is related to a Hanukkah
this
gathering.
would be a pretty grave event, not just something that somebody decides to do, but it has meaning.
Well, the Jewish people have been persecuted throughout history. It's the ancient hatred, I'm afraid. And if this is an attack on Jewish people, then it is of a very different order from a random attack on people enjoying a Saturday, Sunday night out. And I just pray now for the safety of reporters, everyone in that area at the moment, because what you don't know is, I'm afraid, these terrorists do organise sometimes a second attack after a first one. And so we are very lucky that as we run away from moments like this, the emergency services run forward and protect people. And so let's, anyone who's religious now, it's the time to pray for the safety of everyone in that area.
Just to reiterate, shots fired at Sydney's Bondi Beach, that the Australian police are saying that they have 2 people in custody. At the moment, we know nothing about casualties. We have some reports of events that were going on the beach, one related to Hanukkah. And we can now hear, I think we can hear from the Australian Prime Minister. I'll read you what he has had to say. The scenes in Bondi are shocking and distressing. Police and emergency responders are on the ground working to save lives. My thoughts are with every person affected. That is from the Australian Prime Minister. He also says, I've just spoken to the AFP Commissioner and the New South Wales Premier. We're working with the New South Wales Police and will provide further updates as more information is confirmed. What are you making? I think we can come back to our panel. Sonia, what are you making of it?
Well, as we've all said, it's too early to speculate, but it's very hard not to speculate when you've got details out of a Jewish Hanukkah event happening nearby. People clearly believe that there is some connection, and I think if that stands up, the significance of this, it will reverberate much further than Australia. We've had lots of warnings recently about the prospect of terror attacks in the run-up to Christmas across Europe as well. So I think it's something that's very, at the front of people's minds.
Let me not mislead you. We do not know that this is a terror attack. It may have some of those characteristics, but at the moment we have no idea about motivations or anything.
Well, let's be clear.
Like
it is a terror attack, Trevor, because people have been terrorised by people shooting. So I don't think it's wrong to call it that.
I understand what you're saying, Ian, but I think we have to be careful. Now, our correspondent Oliver Whitfield-Miocic is in the newsroom. Oliver, do we know anything more?
Well, we're seeing these images in which it looks increasingly like this is quite a serious incident that is taking place in Bondi Beach. And that is being underscored by what we're hearing from the Australian Prime Minister, who says that the scenes in Bondi are shocking and distressing. Police and emergency responders are on the ground working to save lives. My thoughts are with every person affected. That would seem to suggest then that we have at least a few injuries, potentially more. Also from the Australian Prime Minister saying, I've just spoken to the Commissioner of the Australian Federal Police and the New South Wales Premier. We're working with New South Wales Police and we'll provide further updates as more information is confirmed. The last update that we had from police in Sydney, from New South Wales, was that 2 people had been placed into police custody. Also, that this police operation is ongoing. We had heard this warning for people to shelter in place, for people not to attend the area. Bondi Beach is a hugely popular area with locals who go there to surf. It is popular with tourists who go to Australia and want to see the famous beach, but it's also hugely popular with expatriates, backpackers. It's an area known for people who go to Australia on working holiday visas, who naturally go to Bondi. It's got plenty of bars. It's got a big transport hub with a huge shopping centre just at the top. So it's an area that on a Sunday, just before Christmas, would have been hugely popular. Remember, it is summertime in the Southern Hemisphere, so it would have been warm weather, even at 8 o'clock at night, as that's the time currently. And so you can see from the video that we have on screen, the beach, even at that time of the evening, there was still, judging by it, hundreds of people on Bondi Beach. And so now the police trying to make this area safe, trying to ensure that there are no more shooters in the area, and their investigation is continuing. But as far as what we know, 2 people placed into police custody, a police operation that is ongoing. And as we said earlier on, the Australian Prime Minister, they're saying that they're working with the police. They're going to provide more updates, but also that the emergency responders on the ground are working to save lives.
I just want to read what the Australian Prime Minister has said. He says that the scenes in Bondi are shocking and distressing. Police and emergency responders are on the ground working to save lives. My thoughts are with every person affected. And he goes on to say, I have just spoken to the Australian Federal Police Commissioner and the New South Wales Premier. We are working with the New South Wales Police and will provide further updates as more information is confirmed. We are not showing the material that's being circulated on social media, but from what we're already hearing, it sounds pretty horrific.
Well, it does, and I think, if it is an attack on a Hanukkah gathering, and that is certainly what everybody's speculating about, and I completely accept that we don't know that for a fact yet. But there will be Jewish communities up and down this country who are thinking tonight, well, this sort of thing, we had the Manchester attack, of course, in October here, and there'll be lots of synagogues tonight that will need extra security vigilance. And I think unless you are a Jewish person, you have no idea the level of terror that community is experiencing at the moment. And the government needs to step up to the plate on this and offer the extra reassurance, offer the extra security that that particular community needs at the moment.
Well, I think we should stress, not gainsaying anything you just said, Ian, which I don't think anybody could disagree with for a second. We don't know. We're still talking about if. But I suppose the real thing that we can talk about right now, as I say, given what happened in America and today, the sense of vulnerability that must pervade people. We are now hearing, actually, from the Israeli president, Mr. Herzog, our sisters and brothers in Sydney have been attacked by vile terrorists in a very cruel attack on Jews who went to light the first candle of Hanukkah on Bondi Beach. So it sounds as though the Israelis already have information that has not been made available to the rest of us. I think that rather firms up the speculation. Tim?
Well, there's videos circulating on Twitter that do show this as an attack on this Hanukkah event.
Okay. And Trevor, you talk about the vulnerability of our society, and I think we all know that we're free and open societies. That's the glory of Western civilization. But back to your interview with the Home Secretary that we had a little while ago, one thing that does make us more vulnerable are the small boats crossing the channel. And God forbid that one day we don't wake up to the news that we've woken up to today of what's happened in Australia, but we wake up to a terrorist outrage in our own country that has been perpetrated by people who have crossed on those small boats. I think the small boats crisis is something that we've almost become used to now. We've become used to people crossing the channel, and we really do need to get it under control because it is a source of extra vulnerability for our country. And so, in a way, this terrible, terrible tragedy from Australia, it's another wake-up call for us all to do more to protect our own borders.
I obviously have to keep stressing that the information we have is limited. There have been arrests. It looks as though it has something to do with, or the likely targets were at a Hanukkah event. And as you say, as Ian said, that of course will strike, I won't say terror, don't want to use the word terror, but it will create a feeling across Jewish communities. We're now seeing some pictures from Sky News Australia. They are, I guess, what you would expect, that the place is now swarmed with police and security. We're not hearing that they are looking for further assailants, but they have 2 people in custody. But what we are also seeing, there is a report that 6 people have been taken to hospital. We have no information on casualties. Sonia, Ian's point about the impact that this will have internationally, I guess this is the thing, isn't it? That actually, what actually happens is awful in and of itself, but the impact, the waves that ripple across the globe now because of social media, because frankly, we on television are pumping it around the world, the waves are so much stronger than they would have been in the past.
And I think that's particularly true if, as seems to be emerging from this story, as you say, it's not confirmed yet, but we have had that statement from the Israeli president. I think it's particularly true when it looks like a particular community has been targeted. And in this case, it was a Hanukkah gathering. It was a gathering of Jewish people on Bondi Beach. And I think if we look at what's happening in the UK and across Europe, actually, at the really worrying, growing levels of anti-Semitism that we've seen, particularly in the wake of the Israel-Gaza conflict. But, you know, it was an issue even before then. And I've got Jewish friends, Jewish schools, Jewish synagogues in this country. It's quite extraordinary. For years, there have been volunteers providing security in 21st century Britain because it's felt not to be safe for people to go to their place of worship. And I think that's extraordinary, and I think it's really grave. And I think we have to look at ourselves as a society and saying, what is going wrong here that volunteers need to step up and provide security at the gates of Jewish schools and Jewish synagogues?
Let me remind you of what President Herzog has said. He issued a statement saying, "Our sisters and brothers in Sydney have been attacked by vile terrorists in a very cruel attack on Jews who went to light the first candle of Hanukkah on Bondi Beach." I think the thing that is perhaps most horrific about all of these events is people doing what for everybody else would be normal things. You go to the beach, you celebrate a religious festival. Over in the United States, you're going to the laboratory, and this happens.
I think if you're not Jewish, you have no clue as to what the impact of this will be. A few months ago, I spoke at a synagogue. I won't identify it, but it was in Hertfordshire. And I'd never been to a synagogue before. And it was incredible. There were about 120 people there. And there was security on the door. And I asked about this, and they said, well, we have to have it 24 hours a day because we are attacked. And nobody takes any notice of it.
Ian, I just want to get back to Nicole Johnson because she is now on the line to us. Nicole, what more do we know?
Well, look, this story only broke in the last hour. As you've been reporting, we know that there was an active shooter at Bondi Beach. We've seen really graphic footage of these 2 men dressed in black on a pedestrian bridge at Bondi Beach with a car park underneath. That's one of the main thoroughfares to get to the beach. We've also had other footage that's been circulating on social media that young people are starting to send around of people injured on the ground. There's blood on the ground as well. They're being treated by medical services. We're on our way to Bondi Beach at the moment. I'm probably about 7 or 8 minutes drive from there. And of course, The traffic is all heading in one direction, that is out of the area. We're hearing police heading towards it. There's also been a lot of ambulance activity on the streets. We know that people are being sent to St. Vincent's Hospital near the centre of the city. The reports are that there was a Jewish Hanukkah event happening at the same time in the area. Now, we don't have any information at all about whether there is a link there, whether that has anything to do with it. But the Australian Jewish Association has also been posting this footage that is now going around in Sydney of these two active shooters. We don't know if there were any more active shooters. People have been told to stay indoors in case there are. But two of those active shooters have been taken into custody. So we're not getting any reports that the firing is continuing. But when it was, the reports were that there were dozens of shots fired, that is. So, clearly a sort of unfolding and shocking situation to happen on a Sunday afternoon evening at one of the most iconic sites in Bondi, in the city, in the middle of the tourist season.
You are, you said, Nicole, you're only a few minutes away. I take it that people are basically getting out of the area. Is there's a shelter-in-place order there, is there, I take it?
Yes, I mean, the police have sent out messages, telling people to stay indoors. There is still some traffic on the streets, of course. People would be heading home. It is, as you said, sort of getting later into the evening here, 8:30 p.m. At that time of day, it tends to be young people who are at the beaches. A lot of the families have left by then, but people will be around enjoying the late afternoon. It's a little bit cooler, the sunset. And I was at Bondi Beach yesterday. It is really heaving on a weekend like this. Beautiful temperatures, 25, 30 degrees, only a couple of weeks out from Christmas. It is still busy any time of day from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. It is really heaving down there. So to have an incident like this, and remember, what only happened at the beginning of last year, we had the stabbing attack that was also at Bondi. That was at a major shopping centre, Westfield Shopping Centre, in the central part of Bondi. So that is still very fresh in the minds of people. And as you can imagine, a huge amount of concern with so many, parents having their teenagers there. The schools are just starting to break up. Private schools have already gone on holidays. State schools have just about finished up as well. So it is really summer party time in Sydney. And what's unfolding is clearly horrific, but we're still trying to get more information about casualties and the reports of just how serious it is. But the images, as I said, are shocking. Two men in black firing multiple shots from a high position on a pedestrian bridge that is sort of over a car park that gives a very clear view of the car park, of the beaches. That's
Nicole,
where the firing.
Nicole, let me
seems
just
to have
interrupt
taken
you
place.
for a second. We have a little bit more information. The New South Wales ambulance spokesperson says that 13 people have been taken to hospital after the shooting. So the numbers are higher than we supposed. A few minutes ago, we thought it was 6. Now, the ambulance service is saying that 13 people have been taken to hospital. Forgive me, I interrupted you. You were saying that, as far as you understand it, these shootings were taking place from an elevated position that overlooked the car park.
That's right. And hearing that 13 people have been taken to hospital doesn't surprise me, having seen some of that video, because the reports are that dozens of shots were fired. In the videos that I have seen on social media, you can see multiple people on the ground, injured, blood on the streets. So it was clearly more than just one or two people. There are some reports now that it could be as high as 25 people who've been injured. I mean, there's been ambulance activity you know, for the last hour in the central part of Sydney. So clearly a major incident.
So we have police there. We have the ambulance. We can see helicopters going above the scene. Would the kind of event that we're understanding took place, the Hanukkah event, is that typical of what might be taking place at this time of year on the beach? I mean, was it something that could have been anticipated as an event?
Look, I don't know whether this Hanukkah event was taking place exactly on the beach or nearby. Obviously, it is a religious time of the year for multiple religions, Christians and Jewish people. The eastern suburbs of Sydney has a high percentage, is quite a big area for having a lot of Jewish people here. And they have been very concerned for months now, saying that they feel that they could be under threat because of rising tension, the sort of tension that we have seen all over the world since the beginning of the war in Gaza. But look, we have to be very clear. At this stage, we don't know if there was any direct link at this stage. I'm just getting a bit more information, though, about the event. It was called Hanukkah by the Sea 2025, and it was being held in Bondi Park Playground. So that whole, you know, big beach area that's a couple of kilometres down in Bondi, you have the beach and there are multiple parks around it. But two active shooters from an elevated position, as you said, would have had a very clear shot to anyone in the car park, on the beach, or any of the playgrounds close by. And I've been over that pedestrian area many times. It gets you from the main sort of shopping, restaurant precinct of Bondi across the main 4-lane road there onto the beach.
The way that you described it very vividly, and again, we have to keep saying we don't know that much at this point, but the way that you've described the positioning suggests this would have been an attack, whatever the motivation, that was intentional, planned, and that the position would have been chosen for maximum impact.
Say without doubt, you can see from the video, this doesn't look like any kind of random event. It is probably one of the clearest areas you could select in Bondi to get a clear shot of multiple sort of 360-degree view of Bondi, to the streets, to the car park, to the beach, to the parks there. So, yes, it is really shocking footage to see. As I said, two men dressed in black, multiple shots are heard, and then video is starting to come out of all of the injured. 13 have been reported to have been taken to hospitals. There are reports that it could be even higher than that. For the last hour, people that I know in the area who have children and teenagers who were down on the eastern suburb beaches have been all calling each other, sending messages. The kids have been sending video that's going around. The Australian Jewish Association has also posted this video as well on X, and police have told people to stay indoors.
At this moment, we are not showing you any of the video, showing our viewers any of the videos that are going around, Nicole. But just stay with us for a moment. We are going to play, however, the audio that we have of some of this awful incident. I think, Ian, we're seeing more of the story emerging on social media. Again, you know, I have to keep qualifying. We don't know.
No, absolutely. Well, Winston Marshall has posted a video that he's got from somewhere showing a member of the public rushing up to one of the gunmen, and this guy's got a massive gun, and he wrestles the gun off him. I mean, assuming that that's a legitimate video, what an absolute legend, that's Winston Marshall's words, this guy is. Because sometimes you do need heroes intervening in these situations. And, I mean, it is quite an astonishing thing to watch. And the attacker then falls back, and the guy who wrestles the gun off him, and there'll be lots and lots of other videos circulating like this, but I mean, whoever that guy is who did it deserves a medal.
Yes, indeed, and thank you, and you showed it to me. It's a remarkable piece of video. We understand that the Home Secretary is going to be talking to her Australian counterpart in short order later today. What do you think this will mean for us? I think you were saying, one of you was saying earlier on, of course it's routine now for example, synagogues to have airlocks. I mean, you have to go in, wait, and they're double locks and so on. The Community Security Trust, of course, is an extraordinary organisation that protects Jewish schools and synagogues. But I suspect that there will be some new ideas now. There'll be some need for some new protections. The Home Secretary actually has issued a statement, and I can read that to you. She says, "I can fully understand the anxiety this might be causing people here at home about relatives over in Australia. But first and foremost, our thoughts must be with the victims of this attack in Australia and with the Australian people as well. We will obviously watch closely as details emerge of what exactly has happened, and I'll be talking to my Australian counterpart later on today." We have the news from the New South Wales Ambulance Service. Their spokesperson has said that 13 people were taken to hospital after the shooting at Sydney's Bondi Beach. I think the problem is, of course, we can empathise, we can be appalled, but we don't seem to be... There is no way, essentially, to reduce risk to zero, is there, Sonia?
No, there isn't. And actually, if you read kind of reports from the security services, they always talk about the number of attacks they prevent, but nothing is fail-safe, and there will always be the odd attack that slips through. And that's partly down to the changing nature of... I mean, obviously, we don't know that this was terrorism yet, but the changing nature of terrorism, which means that it's often one or two individuals operating completely independently. It's not being coordinated. It's inspired by online social media material, which actually makes it incredibly difficult to track and prevent. And I do have to say, if you look at the statistics about the number of attacks each year that our security services prevent, it does feel like they do overall a very, very good job on this. But in this day and age, it is impossible to prevent altogether. And we are living in an age, you know, we've had warnings already this year that there may be there is increased risk of terrorism across Europe in the run-up to Christmas. I think what is so scary about this attack is just like the attack on the Manchester synagogue. We've experienced terrorist attacks against Jewish people on our own soil this year, and it looks like that's what's happened in Australia. And I think when you're part of what is actually still a very small community in the UK, you know, the community of Jewish people, the extra fear that strikes into your heart against a backdrop and a context of rising levels of anti-Semitism that have been reported by bodies like the Community Security Trust, it's just kind of intolerable, really.
And there will be hundreds of events going around the country tonight celebrating Hanukkah, and I hope chief constables all over the country will be looking at the security for all of those events.
We're seeing a live shot from Sydney, and I don't know if you can see this clearly, but in that shot, there are bodies on the ground. We can't see how many, but it is clear that there are fatalities. There are fatalities. We will try to get as much news as quickly as we can. Our correspondent, Nicole Johnson, is there, must be getting pretty close to there now, and we'll no doubt return to her in a moment. But we can now talk to the Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel, Sharon Haskell. Good afternoon, Ms. Haskell. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon.
What do we know about what has taken place?
Wow. Well, I just received news, and I think that you might know also Arsen Ostrovsky, who you've interviewed in your channel multiple times, and I've just received a report that he was injured in that particular attack. I have personally many friends there. I've lived in Sydney, around Bondi Beach, for 6 years when I was younger. This used to be one of the safest places for Jews and for the Jewish community. This horrible attack, terrifying attack, where more than nine are already being reported killed and more than 60 who were injured, is a vile terrorist attack. And it is not just an attack on the Jewish community, where they just came to celebrate in Bondi Beach Hanukkah. This was a party of the local synagogue of Chabad, of Bondi Beach Chabad, where families and children are coming to celebrate, light and play with driddles and light candles. This was an attack on Australia. This was an attack on Australians. I mean, this is just unbelievable. But I must say that with all the shock and my concern for my families and my friends who are there and close friends, you know, it's...
Ms. Haskell, can I just get clear? I think you said you thought 9 casualties and rather more. We can't, of course, speculate on that, but how do you think, what
this is from the
reaction do you think
the
this
locals
will...
who were telling me about the bodies who are being evacuated and people who have treated the injured.
What reaction do you think this is going to have amongst Jewish communities across the world?
Dramatically. I mean, this is no difference than, you know, the attacks on many other Jewish communities, like the attack in the synagogue in Manchester. You know, the Jewish community is terrified. Many of them are deciding to leave their home, places who are their home. British people and Australian people and French people and Canadian citizens who decide that they are no longer safe in their country, in their homeland, and are choosing to move to Israel to feel safe, to be able to practice their religion out openly, not to hide their identity, not to fear for their beliefs or their traditions and their culture. And it's absolutely heartbreaking, the point at where the world is right now, and especially where Europe and where Australia and Canada are right now.
What reaction do you think that there will be in Israel itself?
Well, we are shocked. We're devastated. You know, we're very small people, but we are one big family, and every attack on every Jewish community is a personal one, where we know people, we know family members of our friends who are there. And so it touches extremely personally. But I have to say, the writing was on the wall. When governments lack the capability or the willingness to combat and fight anti-Semitism with the biggest strength, then it will just spread. You know, there were so many attacks on synagogues and schools and individuals. And if the government is lacking and not enforcing racism, local attacks, violence in workplaces and racism in workplaces, then of course it will spread. And I've been warning the Australian government that if they don't act now with actions, not with word, and stop rhetoric that is justifying attacks like that, then it will end up with blood. And this is exactly what's happening now. There has to be actions now, not words, actions to protect and defend the Jewish community, to stop violent rhetoric that is justifying these actions. They have to act, otherwise it will become worse and worse and worse.
We can say, based on local news media reports, that there definitely are multiple fatalities here. I think that we are pretty safe now to say, because we can see from pictures that we have, bodies lying in the streets. And I think we can say pretty confidently now that this was a terrorist attack. You've just said, Ms. Haskell, that governments around the world, including the Australian government, could have done more to tackle anti-Semitism. What would you have expected them to do to prevent or anticipate this kind of attack?
Well, fight racism, fight violence against Jewish community, fight racism in workplaces as strong as possible. Look, when you see those hate march in the streets, whether it's London or Sydney, and in the Sydney Opera House, they chanted, "Gas the Jews, gas the Jews." Not even a single arrest, not even a single person who had to answer for that, but they tried to cover that. When you hear them chanting to globalize the Intifada, what do you think that means? Globalizing the Intifada means exactly that. To go on massacres, shooting people in the streets, to violently attack them, this is what it means. And if you let that continue and run in your street, waving flags of terrorists, pictures of people who murdered innocent children, you know, if you don't fight it, in your silence, you actually support that. You justify that. And to globalize the Intifada means exactly that. A terrorist attack on a beach in Australia where Australian civilians are being murdered and killed. This is what it means. So when you hear that, start acting, enforcing, persecuting, punishing, so that people understand this is absolutely unacceptable. No racism, no violence will be accepted, not in Australia and not in the UK either.
Sharon Haskell, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
So, breaking news. An attack by gunmen on Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia. We now know that there have been fatalities. We have seen pictures of them. We are not broadcasting at this point the video that we do have, but it is pretty clear that this is a deliberate attack. We don't yet know about motivations, but what we do know was that the victims were people attending a Hanukkah celebration on Bondi Beach. So, back to our panel. Sonia.
Well, I just think that news that you reported, Trevor, that there are bodies, that it looks like there are fatalities, is just incredibly distressing. And it does sound like, from reports, that actually the scale of the injuries caused is bigger than was originally speculated. So I think that is just very, very distressing news.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
I think we are now, if we weren't before, at a wake-up moment, because just to say, I hadn't heard that story before about people chanting "Gas the Jews" in the Sydney Opera House. And only this week, I don't know whether you two saw Piers Morgan's interview with Nick Fuentes, the Holocaust now is being openly mocked by people in the mainstream media. We seem to have reached a point where anti-Semitism is entering the mainstream on a scale that I would have thought absolutely impossible only very recently. And when you sort of have that cultural change, I'm afraid not much further downstream you get the sort of outrage we've seen today.
And what Sharon Haskell was saying there about the "Gas the Jews" chants outside Sydney Opera House, this has been going on every Saturday since the beginning of the Gaza war on the streets of London.
100%.
And this is where I think the Jewish community will think, well, if it can happen there, it can happen here. Now, it has already happened here in Manchester in October, not to the extent of this. But when we talk about, well, we don't know the motivation, of course we know the motivation. It's quite clear what the motivation is here. It is to kill Jews. Yep. Let's talk about it in those terms, because if we pussyfoot around this debate, I'm afraid people are not going to take it seriously.
And you're absolutely right, Ian, to talk about the security of Jews. This has been an attack on the Jewish people. Yeah. Now, what people are automatically going to assume, of course, is that there's some sort of Islamic motivation behind the attack. That needs to be confirmed. But we also need to think about the safety of Muslim people as well. Most Muslim people in this country will absolutely hate what has happened today as well. And we're seeing actually extra security needed in mosques and other places as well. So absolutely, this is an attack on Jewish people, and our solidarity must be with them at the moment. But this has wider implications for community cohesion as well that we should all be aware of. Lots of mosques are now having to put extra security in as well. It's a daily experience of a lot of people now in our country of interfaith hatred and violence. And that has to be something we all wake up to and challenge.
And there will be, I think, quite a responsibility on politics to do a job of reassurance and calm, because, of course, one of the things that always, the phenomenon that always follows something like this is understandable anxiety, but then can be transformed into finger-pointing and so on by malign actors. The Home Secretary, interestingly, I talked to her this morning about her faith, and of course that will, as you're saying there, Tim, that will now start to play a part. Do we have issues between communities and so on? What do you think, Sonia, politics needs to do here?
Well, I think, yes, it's a matter of kind of reassurance, and you know we're seeing those messages from politicians over here in Australia, but reassurance isn't enough. It's also got to be an issue of security and prevention. And I think when you've got what is a small community in the UK, you know, it has been targeted not just through terror attacks, but through growing incidents of anti-Semitism. We have all seen on social media pictures of graffiti outside synagogues, outside Jewish schools, posters being defaced about the hostages, for example.
Just everyday abuse on streets.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
Jewish people passing by and being abused personally.
Yeah,
you know, it's not unusual.
So I think what we need from politicians is actually, and I know the government has been taking this wave of anti-Semitism seriously, but I think there are real questions about what you do about it, how you tackle it at source, because the worry is that, you know, particularly the conflict that's going on in Israel, Gaza, people seem to be holding whole communities of people responsible. I mean, which is racist. And that has led to a polarisation in the discourse, not just about the conflict, but it has been associated with rising levels of anti-Semitism in general, and it's just not acceptable.
The opposition leader in Australia has described the loss of life as significant. I think that
terrible news.
The numbers are, I think, going to be startling. It's a small community. The Jewish community in Australia numbers something like, I think, 120,000, mostly in Melbourne and Sydney. So the impact on that community is going to be redoubled. This kind of thing, I suppose, it can go one of two ways. It can go in a way that says everybody is united against the terrorists, or it can, as I think to some extent October 7th did, create a situation in which people are more divided. Coming back to what I asked Sonia, Ian, what role can politicians take, I mean, actually, to make sure that we get to the place that she talked about?
Well, they could go beyond mouthing platitudes. Because whenever there is a terror attack, and Trevor, we're all long enough in the tooth to have covered multiple terror attacks over the last 15, 20 years. And there is a cycle that goes on where politicians react with horror, quite rightly, We've got to learn the lessons. We've got to prevent it happening again. We've got to understand and sort of inter-community relations. We've got to do all we can to sort of promote understanding, etc., etc. And media organisations like ours, we will cover this for the next 2 or 3 days and interview all sorts of people with different views. And then it disappears off the media agenda. It disappears off the political agenda until the next time. And that is the challenge, I think, for the governing classes, for the media classes, to try and think, well, how can we actually try and make sure this does not happen again? Now, you can never prevent every terror attack. We don't know at the moment if this was sort of part of something organised. It could, I hope this isn't the case, but it could be something that happens all around the world over the next few days, or it could just be the usual sort of lone wolf thing that happens. As Sonia said earlier, the security services do a brilliant job in preventing these type of attacks. We only know about the ones that actually happen.
We are now able to say, and this is, nobody wants to be on air when this has to be said, Sky News understands that there are 10 people who have died in this attack. 10 people who died in this attack on Bondi Beach. We don't have numbers. We don't have numbers for injuries, but let's go to Oliver again to see what he has. Oliver.
Yes, so Sky News understands that in total 9 civilians have been killed in this incident, including 1 child, according to one of our highly placed sources. This happening at, as we've now established, a Hanukkah event. There are no nationalities so far that have been released in terms of those who have been killed. So 1 gunman has also been killed in this incident. So that means 1 gunman is in custody, 1 has been killed, 9 civilians who are fatalities, and 1 child that has been shot. This is obviously coming at a sensitive time for the Jewish community, not only in Sydney but around the world. A time, as we've been saying all day, this beach, as we've seen from the video, absolutely filled with people celebrating. It's a warm time of year in Sydney. It's very, very warm there. So by evening time, at 7, 8 o'clock, as this has happened, the temperatures have dipped to about 24 degrees, so people were still out on those beaches. And Bondi Beach really is a popular venue for locals, for tourists, for expats. Backpackers go there. There are plenty of bars. There are plenty of restaurants. This is just, really a shocking development in Australia, where gun crime doesn't really happen as much as in other places in the world. But yes, what we have is that 9 civilians have been killed and at least 1 child has been shot.
Thank you, Oliver. I think we may be able to talk to Nicole Johnston in Sydney now. Nicole, I guess you're closer to the beach now. What have you seen?
Yes, we're right on North Bondi Beach at the moment. You've got some of the police and ambulance presence behind us. It is blowing a gale here. The stream is closed off. We can't get any further from today. Now, all the reports are that this attack by these 2 active gunmen took place a few hundred metres down the road here. There is a overpass there. It is a pedestrian overpass that's over a car park. It's very close to the beach. I'm only sort of 50, 100 metres from Bondi Beach at the moment. It happened a couple of hours ago. We've seen very graphic footage being circulated on social media. These 2 active shooters, multiple shots to fired. Reports that there were dozens of shots fired. Now we're starting to get some terrible reports that we haven't heard yet, but more than a dozen people have been taken to Central Hospital. Like shocking developments back down here at Bondi Beach at the moment. Obviously, there's a lot of ambulance, there's a lot of police. We drove up the main sort of road here about 15 minutes away. see a lot of cars trying to get out of the area. But I want to try and how close we can get. I want to keep some of the roads open so that people can get out, people can get home. About 5 minutes ago, before we went on air, we saw someone who had been injured again with emergency crews on a stretcher just behind it. So clearly they're still getting people out of this area. People have been told to stay at home, but lots of people aren't at home. You can see people are sort of wandering around the area. Obviously, a somber mood is going on. People are confused about what is happening. And the question is, what was this really all about? We know that there was a religious Jewish event, a Hanukkah event happening very close to here. The Australian Jewish Association has posted about what's going on at Bondi Beach. They've also posted some of the video that has been sent around, social media video that shows the 2 active gunmen on the overpass, as well as showing people who had been injured lying on the ground, pools of blood. So really a developing situation here at Bondi Beach.
Nicole, thank you. What we do know is that there have been 9 victims killed and 1 shooter. There are 10 fatalities. We don't yet know anything about the motivations. We will no doubt be kept up to date. We suspect that there are more injuries, more casualties. We don't know how that's going to develop. What we can also say with some certainty is that this was an attack on a Hanukkah celebration, a Jewish celebration on the beach. And that, I think, tells its own potential story about the motivation here. Tim, this is going to, I guess, cast a shadow over pretty much everything going up to politics, going up to Christmas, I beg your pardon, both in politics and much more widely. Coming back to the point we were discussing earlier on, the thing that is striking is that nobody on that beach was doing anything abnormal. And the real anxiety for people, wherever they are in the world, now has to be, can you go out safely, shopping, party, to the park?
Yeah. And that is what terrorism is about. It's trying to turn what are ordinary things that we do every day into something that we're frightened of. And particularly for the Jewish community, that their ordinary celebrations, going to a synagogue, are being terrorised. And it's so easy for me, in the safety of this studio, to say this, but the only way we confront these terrorists is to try and carry on living our normal lives. That doesn't mean we do it in exactly the same way. We may need to have more security, which is something the Jewish community has had to invest in for a very long time. We do, though, as a nation, I think, need to redouble our efforts to secure this country. Immigration is one of the top issues that people are worried about in this country, and it's the illegal immigration that they worry about most. And in the interview you did earlier, Trevor, with the Home Secretary, you rightly raised again the fact that the people coming across the Channel in small boats is growing again, and we need to confront these issues so that people do feel safe in their ordinary business of life.
The Australian police are now confirming that there are 10 people dead, 10 individuals who have died as a result of this shooting. We understand that 9 of those are victims, and one of them was a shooter. We can play you again that audio, the audio of that incident. OK, I can bring you a response from our own Community Security Trust. They've issued a statement saying they condemn the appalling attack that appeared to have targeted a Hanukkah celebration on Bondi Beach in Australia. They explain the festival, and then they say the CST will continue to work closely with police, government and community partners to protect Jewish life in this country, including discussions this morning to increase security and policing for Hanukkah events in the UK over the next 8 days. Very briefly, we've got about 45 seconds to go. I remember a point before we had to have checks at airports. Is this kind of thing going to change our life in that way?
Well, I think the life of Jewish people in this country has already changed in the sense that there is now security, and there has been for a number of years, even before the Israel-Gaza conflict, on synagogues, on Jewish schools. So, yes, it might change life for the rest of us, but I think we shouldn't underplay how much it feels like one community has been targeted. OK, I'm sorry, guys. We've got to stop now, and I have to pass over to my colleague, Matt Barbette, at 10 o'clock. We'll be back next week at 08:30.